bounty hunting is a complicated profession. Don't you agree?
The Cinik Radio Podcast.
Hi, I'm Chad L. Coleman, Tyrese from The Walking Dead, and Cuddy from The Wire, and you are listening to the Cinik Radio Podcast. Here are your hosts, Cinik.
Hey, the facts are Spider-Man belongs in the MCU. Sony was delusional thinking they didn't need Marvel, and now he's back. And we, the fans, are 100% proudly responsible for that.
Agree?
As long as DC wants to make dark and gritty movies, they're going to lag behind Marvel in every category.
And Ryan.
Batman vs. Superman is objectively better than Infinity War.
This is the greatest show of all time.
And this is episode 168 of the Cinik Radio Podcast, and I'm your only slightly less better looking than a bloater host, Cinik. And joining me as always from his very white room in Manhattan, fitness expert and comic book creator Ryan George. And on this week's show, we're discussing the many different shades of gray and breaking down episode 5 of The Last of Us, Endure and Survive. And we're going to sneak a little bit of Super Bowl talk, mostly about the commercials. Ryan, we're running a little short-handed this week. IG's in Vegas attending a Pride rally, so you're going to have to do a lot of the heavy lifting. But let's quickly talk about what were your favorite Super Bowl ads.
Mine were all based on movie properties because I didn't watch much of the Super Bowl. So I will say that, and I'm sure we'll get into it a little bit more, but I thought both the Flash and Guardians trailers were fantastic. So really looking forward to those. So I'm gonna give you those as my favorite ads, just by default because I know they came out during the Super Bowl.
What were your favorite, and why did you like them?
So I think the Flash. It looks great. I think it looks like it's got a bit of the nostalgia with Michael Keaton and Batfleck for what it's worth in it. It looks really good. I mean, just looks like it was shot well. It looks like an interesting story. There's some shocks in it. We had like Zod's back and Supergirl. So I feel like they're really going all out for it, and it looks good despite whatever we might think about Ezra Miller at this point. I feel like most people are going to have to go see it in spite of them, which I guess is a good, I don't know if it's a good thing or a bad thing, but it looks really good. So I'm excited. And same goes for Guardians. I think Guardians, it seems like it's set the right tone for what it needs to be. I think it is very much a finale to of a trilogy and James Gunn's kind of swan song with Disney. So I feel like that it looks really good. It looks exciting. Again, it seemed like it has the right tone. I'm kind of excited to see where it goes.
Yeah, I agree with you. This looks to be possibly the best version of The Flash we've seen so far. And I was a big fan of the TV show when it first came out on the WB. And, for the most extent, I really still am. But I really like what I saw in this trailer. I mean, it was rich in nostalgia, which always is huge for me. I mean, it was very, very Michael Keaton heavy, which was great because that alone, if they told me there was going to be another Michael Keaton Batman, I'd be first in line for that. Yeah. But the fact that we're getting other superheroes and we're getting Zod back and there's just so many things to like about this trailer. And it makes me feel a little bad that they possibly could not be moving on with the story after this movie. The same with Aquaman. No matter how great Aquaman is, it looks like he may be moving on. Jason Momoa may be moving on to another, possibly a new character. So as good as I think we're just going to have to kind of treat these movies as one-offs and kind of go along with it. And as far as the Guardians trailer, I really think it feels like a goodbye to me. The whole trailer feels like we're heading towards a conclusion with these characters. Not contracts aside, and it just the tone is very exciting, very fun, but very much a celebration of these characters as they fade off, and we get possibly a new lineup of Guardians next time. And speaking of nostalgia, I'm going to hit you with both of mine. which were the Breaking Bad's Popcorners ad, which I absolutely love. Anytime we can see Walt and Jesse together, and then they throw in Tuco, you absolutely sold me on that. So that was cool. I was excited about it. It was for a good product, so I was happy. And then we got a surprise Dunkin' Donuts commercial with Ben Affleck and Jennifer Lopez, which was simply hilarious. Just him working behind the counter, taking orders. It was pretty funny. I remember back in the day that Dave Letterman did that before anybody else did. He was working, I believe, at like a McDonald's, and it was just great. And when I finally got to see the show live, that was one of the things that they warmed up the crowd with, is him behind the counter just taking orders. So that was a lot of fun to see. It was exciting. And my movie one, I like the ones that you picked, but I wanted to pick something different. So Creed 3 is coming out. He's back for another round, and this time he's fighting Kang the Conqueror, which it should be pretty cool. And wasn't my favorite ad, but it was definitely my wife's. As excited as she was, over that, it was the same with me with The Flash and Guardian. She's tapping my arm to pay attention to the screen. So we'll definitely be front and center when that movie comes out. And, Michael B. Jordan is a constant reminder how badly I need to get to the gym. So that's always good.
Well, Michael B. Jordan and Jonathan Majors in like the same, it's like, what do you have to do? or just give up?
It's like, yeah, I'm never going to be able to compete with these guys. So just enjoy the movie, honey. I'll be over here eating popcorn and making a slab on myself. Ryan, let's get to the episode. Endure and Survive was really, really deep and really, really interesting watch, but also a little painful. And the episode opens with a large celebration on the night that Fedra fell. The jubilation quickly turns into almost like a horror story, as Federal forces are not only they're not being taken captive, but they're being beaten and hung. And even though we didn't see the tide turn, just these post-overthrow antics against Fedra, does it say to you that they were possibly severely abusing their power in Kansas City?
Yeah, I guess so. But it's hard for me. It's interesting because I don't know the show. The show has not painted Fedra in a particularly good or bad light to me. It feels like they're maybe an oppressive government, but are they more or less oppressive than any other, I don't know. It's hard to say. I feel like what the show has done a great job of, as is dealing with these shades of gray, where let's assume that what Fedra's doing Fedra was a horrible oppressive government. The reaction was atrocious, like, dragging people in the streets and murdering and torturing. So I think it shows you that rebellions, no matter what side you're on, are ugly and often lead to the heroes becoming the villains, and that it's never clean and it's never black and white, and there are always shades of gray. And if nothing else, I think the show is constantly showing us that. I mean, we get that thematically throughout this episode, that like nobody is pure good or bad, and everybody's capable of horrible things under the right circumstances. So I take more of that from it than necessarily Fedra being just this awful oppressive government. And maybe they were oppressive because they felt like they had to in order to keep people safe. I mean, that we see that too. So I think it shows, power is corrupting, and I don't know, everybody's capable of horrible things.
Yeah, I mean, even our protagonists, Joel and Tess, they even had that discussion, like, hey, we've done stuff that isn't in the best of light. Yeah. And, you kind of have to do what you have to do to survive. I understand that you need to treat people decently, but at the same time, Fedra's in a no-win situation because supplies are probably limited. People are probably scared. And, meanwhile, you have this constant danger around you that if it gets in any way could just jeopardize the whole QZ. Yeah. So I get where you'd want to be strict, but you don't want to abuse people. And I think they accuse them of murder and rape and a couple other horrible things. But definitely not an easy situation for anybody involved. Yeah. Now, speaking of Kathleen and the resistance force in Kansas City, her bearded right-hand man is played by an actor named Jeffrey Pierce, who also voiced Joel's brother, Tommy, in The Last of Us Part 1. Ryan, do you think that casting these voice actors from the game not only gives a respectful nod to the game, but also provides like cool little Easter eggs?
Yeah, I think it's Easter eggs. It is, it's both doing right by the people who made this what it was, because I think you don't get the game. The game is not as good as it is without the story, without the gameplay, and also without the voice acting. I think they also all did a great job. So I think paying service to them and, giving them, saying, hey, paying homage to them. Like, yeah, they're not going to be the characters they were in the game, but they still get a role, and a fairly large role, at least for these couple episodes. And also, I think it's a little, does service to the fans as well, because I think the fans get excited about that. If you were excited about the game, that's a nice little Easter egg for you. And it's nice to know that, hey, this guy that I know played this character is in this show. So I think all around, it's definitely, it earns goodwill, which the show has just been doing, a great job of throughout.
Yeah, it really has. And I kind of enjoy whenever something like that pops up, like the head of the Firefighters, Marlene, actually got to keep her role from game to TV show, which was kind of awesome. Yeah. So the actress that plays Kathleen is an actress named Marlene Linsky, and she made some headlines for clapping back at Adriana Curry, a relic from America's Top Model and VH1's reality shows. She tweeted something along the lines of, for a post-apocalyptic warlord, she has a body of a life of luxury. And with that, Linsky responded with, first off, it was from a cover shoot from In Style magazine, and not a still from the HBO Last of Us. I'm playing a person that has meticulously planned and executed an overthrow of Fedra. I'm supposed to be smart, mama. I don't need muscles. That's what henchmen are for. I mean, what's your take on that? I mean, do all antagonists need to be alphas with gym bodies?
No, I think that's the whole point, is like first of all, it's dumb to look. We suspend disbelief to a large extent when it comes to any of our fiction. That being said, it never once occurred to me, like she's got more weight on her than somebody might have in that situation, because it doesn't really matter. And sure, it's not like they don't have access to food. So first off, like I think her tweet was purely to body shame, which is unnecessary, and it's not worth it. And I think that response was great. Like, it was a great response. And yeah, it's like leadership is there generally because of their minds, especially in a situation where they do have weapons. It's not like they're all going out there fighting hand to hand without weapons. No, you need people behind you, people to trust you. And that's that. So you can totally be a leader on intelligence and cunning. You don't need to be, the biggest, strongest person. You might need to have the biggest, strongest people backing you, but as she said, those are the henchmen. And that's what it is. So yeah, it's like, I think it was a great response, and it was only the initial tweet was only to get attention and to body shame, and I think she responded exactly the right way. And I think Melanie Linsky's been great in, it's great that she's had this kind of career resurgence recently, because she's a fantastic actress, and we're seeing it time and time again in these different roles that she's in.
Yeah, she's absolutely done a great job. I'm going to get into my feelings on the character a little bit later, more towards my closing. I feel like it was a little underdeveloped, but the time that she was on screen, she definitely commanded the screen time. Yeah. She was a compelling villain, to say the least. Yeah. And I mean, at the same time, we see Kathleen talking to the collaborators, and you see the trucks going by and announcing that, hey, if you turn yourself in, you'll be given trials and possibly be free to go. But then she tells the people that they have prisoner, like, yeah, you're going to be given trials and you'll be free to go. And then turns around and tells her brigade that just kill them and burn the bodies. It'll be easier. I mean, this show point out more that freedom is really only if you're on the side that's holding the gun.
Yeah, I would think so. And that, again, we go back to, this is why, you can't ever really trust whoever's in power, because whoever you're left to the whims of whoever's in power. So no matter how well they speak and how much you might think you align with them, you're only aligned as much as their insanity allows. And it's clear here. Now, obviously, I think her judgment is very much clouded. She's on she's one-track mind. And which is unfortunate, because here's somebody who's clearly helped orchestrate an overthrow of a regime, and she could use that for good, and she could take her time, but she's so obsessed that it leads to her demise and possibly the demise of her entire rebellion and society. So it just goes to show, like, not everybody is meant to be in power, and what comes with power. And yeah, it's like you're left to the whims of those with whoever has the gun.
Yeah, it's definitely unfortunate. We cut over to Henry and Sam, who she's searching for, and they're hiding out in an attic with food supplies dwindling. And the search team's getting closer. 10 days in, Henry decides it's time to move. Ryan, could you have waited 10 days before leaving Kansas City? Just waiting in that attic to be caught?
Yeah. It's again a great thing about what the show does. I've said a few time and time again, the show does a really good job with tension. And I think any good post-apocalyptic movie or show or zombie show or movie or whatever, it puts you in the position of the characters and makes you wonder, like, how would I fare in this situation? And generally makes you, that those thoughts are not good. And I wouldn't have been able to wait the 10 days. And I was just terrified for them about the food. Like, what do you do when you're there to care for a child and there's no food? And it's a terrible thought. And then you can get even into deeper thoughts about, well, there are people in this world that live like that. So it gets pretty deep and painful pretty quickly. And like, I don't know what I would do if I'm him in that situation, because you have to get out. You only have so much food, but that if you're caught, you're dead. And I might have tried to have left a little bit earlier, but I also can't blame him for sitting and taking as much time as he could to think.
Yeah, you got to wait it out sometimes, but I don't know if I could sit around for 10 days. It's especially if somebody else is under my care and I'm the reason they make it or not. Yeah, I don't know if I could wait that long. I would just be crawling up the walls, and that's 10 days with nothing to do.
Yeah.
There didn't look like there was any books or TVs in that attic.
It's 10 days to plan, right? Like, so I think part of it is that, well, okay, he even says that initially, like, we've got whatever, 10 days or 12 days. I forget how many days he said initially, but we have this many days to figure it out. So I think he was banking on, I'm forgetting the guy's name now, but him coming back and them working through their plan. And so I think that, I think he knew that there was no talking his way out of things and that he and his brother were dead. So he's stuck between a rock and a hard place, because the minute he leaves, they're extremely vulnerable, but they only have so much food. So yeah, he's in an extremely tough spot.
Well, maybe he's probably smarter and definitely more patient than I am, because his patience pays off. He spots Joel and Ellie's bumpy ride into town, and Henry seeing Joel taking out the hostiles, and decides, hey, this is our way out. But would you have approached him the way they did in The Dead of Night with empty guns? Because it could have went wrong really easy.
I feel like at that point you have no choice. Like, the enemy of my enemy is my friend, right? So in that case, he knows that Joel is not a friend of Kathleen and her group. So I think it was just a calculated decision of, like, I need to get out of here. He's the guy, he's the guy that he knows the way out, and he's the guy that he's got the firepower and the skills. And so I think it was just a calculated decision of, earn his trust. Also, like, he earned his trust, because it's like, okay, I've got you, I've got a gun to you. So, you can't do anything. Then let me talk and reason my way out of it. And then I put my guns away. And then Joel trusts him, because they all are aligned in what and need each other. So I think it was a calculated move, but I think that was his only choice. I can't think of any other options he had beyond just trying to escape on his own. But other than that, like, I think that's it. That was his only choice.
Except for, you laughed at it, motherfucker. He has an asshole voice is Ellie's best line to date, without a doubt. I absolutely laughed my ass off when she said that.
Yeah. This show so far has been hysterical. Like, there are so many laugh out loud moments. 90% of them are from Bella Ramsey. Like, her delivery, like, she's got some great comic timing, which is funny considering how dull, like, it's supposed to be dull intentionally, but how kind of dull and monotone her character was in Game of Thrones. But she's just, like, she's got great timing and like is such a funny character.
As they make their way through the tunnels, Joel and Henry have several conversations, and Henry's story changes just a little bit every time they talk. It's sort of like a Tinder date when you ask them about what they wrote on their profile. I mean, could you sympathize with Henry? And if you were in his position, would you have done as much white lying he may have done it?
Yeah, I think clearly, in a way that, this world kind of mirrors our world in that it seems like it's very polarized. Like, you're Fedra or you're not. And I think he also knows, like, there are some people that either, I think he knows, like, there are some people that are either, hardcore on one side or another. And I don't think he's ready. I don't think he trusts that Joel's reaction is going to be good. And that maybe if he finds that he's a snitch, which that he will freak out. So I can empathize with him or sympathize with him, kind of slowly releasing more information before, hitting him, with the kind of tsunami, so to speak.
Yeah, he's definitely spending that trust as soon as he gets it. Like he's banking it and then he's spending it right away. He's like me on payday. Like, what can I buy with this? What's on Amazon right now? Because he's like, oh, and by the way, I'm a collaborator. Oh no, by the way, I did this. And Joel shows a little bit of goodwill. Like, well, if you were protecting Sam, I get, okay, well, I did that, So yeah, he's definitely using up that goodwill as quick as he gets it. Henry's planning to lead through the maintenance tunnels in the city, which may or may not be full of infected, which I thought was amazing. You must be really desperate that you'd go rushing down there on second or third information, not knowing yourself whether there's anything up going on. IG checking in from Vegas. We love you too, and safe travels, and we hope you get back soon. Ryan, the tunnels are surprisingly uneventful. I mean, they make their way through. Sam and Ellie spend a lot of time together, and they get closer. A little bit more of Joel showing his dad's side. He tells Henry, listen, if he collaborated to protect Sam, I spoke out of turn. I probably should have done that, because he would have done the same thing for Sarah. Right. And then finally he reveals it, the big bomb. He killed the head of the Kansas City resistance to save Sam. Can you remain a good guy if you do bad things for the right reasons?
I mean, that's the question of the show, and I don't think it's, and I think he acknowledges that to a large extent. That's not really anyone's responsibility to answer. You're going to do what you're going to do, and I think that's what makes him a morally gray character and a morally gray decision, because you have, he saved his brother who was a child, but he sacrificed somebody else's brother. And not only that, but he sacrificed somebody who was a great man. So then you start asking yourself, like, okay, well, is it worth generally we'll say, okay, well, we'll say, we want to save the life of a kid over an adult. Fine. But do you save the life of a kid over Einstein? Do you see, so then, then you start asking these, like, how does the math line up? Like, was it worth risking his life over a quote great man who maybe could have done a lot, really done something for society? Maybe this rebellion doesn't end the way it does if he's there. So yeah, and that's the thing with the show is I think we all have choices to make, and our choices are always going to be subjective. But we're always generally going to side with our family and friends and people close to us before we go to other people. So yeah, it's like you can sympathize with that decision and also acknowledge, like, maybe it wasn't the right choice, because it's like the trolley problem, and in this case, in this trolley problem, like, he's actively pulling a lever, and he's and is that right? Was that the right thing to do? Probably not. But if you or I were in the same position with a loved one, we'd probably do the same thing. So I think that is the great thing about the show, is that it takes these moral questions and really when you put yourself in those positions, you can say it's right or wrong, but you're still going to go about doing the same thing.
Yeah, I agree with you. I mean, it's not a question that you can leave up to other people. It's a question you have to answer in your own mind about your own actions and your own justification. And you've got to believe in that once you do it, or it'll tear you apart on the inside. Yeah. Because how many lives were lost because he went ahead and did this? Because Kathleen's brother definitely seemed like he was slightly more level-headed than Kathleen. Yeah. So maybe all this federal murder, maybe, the carnage afterwards doesn't happen if he's around. But it's hard to say. They reach the other side of the maintenance tunnels and all hell breaks loose. They get pinned down by a sniper and Kathleen's forces are on the way. And then we get the answer to what's underneath the floor. We get our first look at a horde of just infected that were rumored to be underground. How did that visual of all of them springing up and running out at the soldiers, just with reckless abandon, how did it compare to other movies and shows in this genre that we've seen?
That's an interesting question. I think the scene worked really well, and I'll give you a couple of reasons. I think when you compare it to other genres, I think as far as the visuals it looked good. It was clearly very well choreographed. The zombie design looks really good. It kind of reminds me of Black Summer, which I don't know if you've watched it, but it's a really good zombie show. Great tension, great use of zombies. So I really liked the design and how they looked, but not that it stood out. What stood out was the way it was shot. because the action was shot in a way that everything was understandable. So like, even though it was chaos, right? You have who knows, God knows how many extras and people running around, because it didn't seem like it was a lot of CGI, but there was a lot going on, but you can still follow the action, which is always really important. I think what's always separates like a good director or good action direction for bad action direction is that in bad action direction, you're not sure what's going on. You're not sure where people are oriented in the world, and you're just following cut scene by scene, and it's kind of hard to follow the action. In this case, you could follow the action and what was going on and who's going where. The tension was great. And then the other thing, which again is a little homage to people who play video games, it felt like a video game, because I don't know if this was part of the game, but with Joel from up on high, taking down infected, it felt like something you would do in a video game. And so it had this sense of feeling like a video game sequence while also you're watching, an action scene. So I thought it was really well done and really well shot, just based on that, because I could see what was going on. It was still tense. Like, even though I knew that Ellie was going to survive, you're still a little bit scared, like what is going to happen to her. You had this impending doom feeling of they're heading around the corner to get, they're people that are going to get Joel. Like, there was a feeling of like, okay, something bad could happen. I was a little scared, even though I knew nothing bad was going to happen. Otherwise we don't have a show. So I think whenever you get that feeling of impending doom for a character is going to survive, I think you've done a good job. So all in all, I think the action scene really was great.
Yeah, and it wasn't just, it was all practical. Like, it was all people in suits, and even the bloater wasn't CGI, which I thought was great. And it wasn't just how many of them or how fast they came out, but it was their movements. It's so herky-jerky the way they move. It's like, it just makes it more terrifying. That even if I was on set, I think I would be just slightly a little bit scared. And then we top it off with the bloater coming out of the the ground, and I can't tell you how many times that thing killed me the first time I encountered it. So when I saw that thing, I'm like, oh, that's going to be a problem. And it was. Perry got the blunt end of it. And that's exactly how he kills in the video game. He basically grabs you by the mouth and just rips it open. Yeah. So that was a great shout out to the video game. And the video game portion of it happens very similar. Same thing, sniper. It's more during the day, but it's not a big horde. It's kind of drips and drabs of between fighting the resistance and fighting the infected. So I prefer this. One of the few times I actually prefer this over the video game. They did a really good job with building it up. So Kathleen falls into the oldest villain trope ever, choosing vengeance over leading her people to safety. Did the punishment fit the crime as she was attacked by that small female clicker?
I guess so. It was, like you alluded to earlier, that we didn't get a lot of character development, so it was kind of a quick demise for her. And I understand. I think I've realized, because we've had this several times. I think her, like, the difference though, like between, let's say, the Bill and Frank episode, or even with Henry and Sam, is we get these characters that even though we get an episode with them, they're pretty fully fleshed out, and we really connect with them. With Kathleen, I mean, she's a villain, and so maybe she's a little bit underdeveloped, but all of these characters are in service to Joel and Ellie, and so I wish we got a little bit more with her, but but she, it was like kind of like, for the most, she wasn't quite a mustache twirling villain, but she was very close to it. At least, we could kind of sympathize with her. But her like just complete focus at the expense of her people on capturing Henry at some point, crosses that line of, okay, I can sympathize with you, to the point of, okay, you need to die because you've just sacrificed basically all of your people for this. So yeah, she probably deserved being killed by a tiny, a kid clicker.
Yeah, that clicker, there's pictures of her on the internet. She's like a young gymnast, and she's, legs overhead, like holding a bowl of popcorn. It's just freaky. The whole thing. But what the standout of that whole scene was, this week I've seen two extremely terrifying things. So I'm going to pose this question to you. All right, the bloater that came under the ground, or the idea of a bear high on cocaine? I mean, which one would win in a fight, and which one are you more afraid of?
Oh, definitely the bloater. I feel like a bear high on cocaine might be okay. I've seen enough Russian, like, they tend to all come from Russia, but enough videos of bears that are totally cool with humans that I definitely would take my chances with that bear over the bloater. The bloater looks terrifying.
Yeah, we have a horror movie coming out that's called, I believe, Cocaine Bear.
Okay,
and it's
yeah.
just it flying at people and just destroying their days.
Okay,
It's
well,
terrible.
I feel like the bloater at least will also kill you instantly. So if the bear's going to kill you, I feel like it might play with you a little bit. Might not kill you right away. So I'll still take the bloater because at least it'll kill you. You'll be dead pretty instantly.
I don't know, Ryan. You're discounting the cocaine aspect of it all. All right, the heroes don't walk away unscathed, as it turns out they're kind of hanging out in a hotel, and Sam is infected. He later attacks Ellie, and Henry has to put him down before killing himself. Your thoughts on that painful final scene, the episode, and your rating?
Well, so now this is a point where I'm forgetting now what if there are other gut punches coming up, but I know people were kind of like after episode 3, like, oh, if you think that's bad, wait until you get wait until you see what's coming up. And I think that's the thing of the show is like it's delivering in a way that I did not expect, because like it's doing a great job of making you care about characters and then just pulling the rug out from under you. And I think it really did that with Henry and Sam. I think what it does, which is really clever, is it we're connecting with the characters because we're seeing them interact, but also watching Joel and Ellie connect with them was also a really important thing. Like watching Joel open up, and even that, that was a great line where Ellie, I forget, what she said, but basically like, yeah, he's going to say you don't have to come with us, but then he's going to give up, and then he does. I mean, it like just watching them engage and connect with other people was just as important as watching the pair interact with each other. And so, again, it does a great job of making you care about people. And then it's just a gut punch. And so when he reveals he's infected, it was just painful. And then Ellie's reaction again shows her naivete. Like what did she do? She cut herself and tried to pour blood into the infected wound. It's desperation, but that's what you do if that's your only friend in the apocalypse. And so when, and then Henry's got to make that awful decision to kill him and then kill himself. And, it works so well because it's just so sad and such a shock. And then Ellie's reaction, she's been sarcastic and kind of a smartass the whole time, and all of a sudden, like she's hurt, she's crushed. And then Joel's reaction to that, which is he's somebody who's seen it all and dealt with it all, and it probably hurt him even more to watch her in pain, which just goes to show how much he's grown to care for her. So there's just so many layers that have been built on their relationship. I can't say enough how good this show has been so far. So I think this episode was a great episode. It had everything. It had the small moments. It had comedy. It had some great action. And again, it just has that gut punch of an ending that, as bad as it is, it's, something we look for TV is we want those moments that really just hit us hard. It sucks, but that's when you're watching something good. So I easily give this episode a 9.5. Just again, great hour of TV. This show keeps knocking it out the park.
I'm about 3/4 of the way through the game, and that was the roughest thing so far. And now, mind you, it was the end of the week. It was my first night off. It was about 3:00 in the morning, and I go through the Henry and Sam thing. And I'll tell you, it almost got me. Like I was sitting here like just, it was rough because it happened just about the same way in the game. And so far, that's been the hardest thing you deal with. I think it was the movie Fight Club that they coined the phrase single serving friends. And that's a lot of what we have going on here because the show is moving. So unless people link up with Ellie and Joel, we're only going to get single serving friends. And unfortunately, as much as this story was about Henry and Sam and how much they loved each other, it was very much about the impact of losing Henry and Sam on Joel and Ellie. And I really think Joel is learning it's not just enough for Ellie to endure and survive physically, but she needs to emotionally as well. And I think that the things that she's going through are bringing them close together. The Horde was absolutely terrifying. The episode kicked me every single part of my body that hurts. And I'll give it Endure and Survive a 9.5 as well. My only issue with Kathleen is that if it was The Walking Dead, we would have all season to get to know her like we did the Governor or Negan, but she's only got a short arc. So it just didn't feel completely fleshed out the way it was. I think we could have done more with her, maybe cutscenes in other episodes, but it's not really Game of Thrones and they don't handle things that way. So it did pay off with, it did pay itself off though with seeing the infected attack in mass. And we find out why humanity fell. I mean, that is rough. It's not a horde of lumbering zombies coming at you, but they're springing at you. And usually I'm not the biggest fan of the boss mob, but the bloaters get it done. They work for me. So the boss mob definitely works in this situation. So we'll be back with a jam-packed episode next week. IG is returning, and we're going to get to talk about Ant-Man and possibly the 6th episode of The Last of Us if we don't push it to next 2 weeks from now and do the 6th and the 7th at the same time. So I wanted to thank everybody who tuned in live, all the views, likes, comments during the week. The podcast is growing, and it's all because of you. I love the format we're doing. I love being able to communicate with everybody and get to talk to them every week. You can find us on all the social media at Cinik Radio. And until next time, don't get captured.
Follow the podcast on Twitter, Facebook, and at CinicRadio.com. Available for download on iTunes.